Well, Claire, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Just keep talking because the accent, we didn't even talk about this beforehand, but I actually lived in Newcastle for 9 months. So
Did you?
I did.
Newcastle of all places.
Yeah. I went to
Ama-
uni there.
Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic. It's
And
obviously, you guys don't say uni in the States, but in
no.
Australia, that's what we call college.
Yeah.
And yeah, I spent my years slaving it out in uni over here as well.
Well, I loved it. It's funny. People react that way. They're like Newcastle. And I'm like, it was an hour north of Sydney. It was so easy to get around. I lived on the beach. I surfed every day. I mean, it was like the Australian dream, you know? I mean, that's exactly what I wanted to do. And then I popped around the country. So love, love, love Australia. Waiting patiently to go back. Yeah,
Oh,
for
I
sure.
love that. Well, you'll
Yeah.
definitely have to reach out and if you come back. I've actually lived in Newcastle as well,
Have
and
you?
lived in Sydney and Brisbane, and I'm now in the Gold Coast. I'm not sure if you got there in your
Yeah.
travels at all, but yeah, that's
Sure
where I
did.
am now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm really excited to be connected. We were just talking offline on how we got connected. We finally figured it out. And of course, it was through this entrepreneurial sort of coaching community. But the thing that I'm most excited about is you have a background as a corporate accountant. Like that's pretty cut and dry, pretty black and white here in the States. I'm sure a similar type job. But what your content, a lot of what your content is a blend of what we both call like the woo or the spiritual. And so, first and foremost, I'm really curious, did you have some sort of a pivotal moment in your life or a wake up moment that got you interested in kind of the woo or the spiritual? Or were you raised that way? Was that always something that you were interested in?
Not at all. I'm a very black and white sort of person, but actually, my spiritual journey started when I met my husband.
Wow.
And the first time I was at his house, I was like, what is that? And he said, that's my crystal collection.
Ah!
And I thought this guy's really a bit strange. And to be fair, my husband is a bit of a lad. Like it's not something that you would have expected from him. He likes footy. And yeah, that was sort of my first insight into what are crystals about and what's this all about. And then one of the things he invited me to go on was a meditation course with him.
Wow.
And at the time, that felt like the most weird, left field, bizarre thing I'd ever heard of. And when I went, I remember the feeling inside the room where it wasn't a meditation feeling. Like I had like a spiritual some sort of thing happen, and the woman came over to me and she's like, I felt that, or made some comment to me. And that was probably the start of my journey. I then found a money mentor, actually from Newcastle. I'm not sure if you've heard of Denise Duffield Thomas, but
Yeah.
I stumbled across her and then did her program, learning more about money mindset. And since then, I've sort of been on this own journey. And I've been told by multiple psychics and people in the world, they say, you're a healer. And I've heard those words again and again. And I guess in many ways, I do help people heal their money traumas.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've just been able to witness the power firsthand of how you can blend spirituality into business and see the impacts.
It's amazing. How long did you work as a corporate accountant?
So I was an accountant. Oh my gosh, I'm going to show my age here for 15 years
Okay.
before I started my own business. So I've been a mentor for 8.5 years now. And
Incredible.
again, showing my age there.
It's amazing. 8.5 years in this industry is not something to foo-foo over. Like that is long-term staying power and also shows your early adopter. Like 8.5 years
Yeah.
ago was quite some time ago. I'm curious if you've had any like pivots or niche changes or anything like that over the 8.5 years.
Yeah. So when I first got started, I was working with everyone. I was kind of a coach come consultant, and you name it. I was working with a startup tech guy. I was working with product-based businesses. I was doing it all. And then I think and I'm really proud of myself for having the courage just to get out there and get started. And then that's a lot of times I really hid from this background in finance. I didn't want people to think that I was a dork. I don't know. I just and then I realized, Claire, this is your whole jam. It's money. Stop
Yeah.
being scared of it. So I actually do teach a business finance course now. And of course, I teach about money mindset as well. So I think that that's the journey most entrepreneurs go on, really, isn't it? We all
Sure.
sort of figuring it out as we go along. And
Yeah.
I definitely feel like I've landed where I'm meant to be.
So I'm doing the math in my head right now, and we were just talking off air, and you have a 9-year-old. So you started this entrepreneurial journey 6 months after having your first baby.
Correct. And you are a maths genius. Can I just say, I am very impressed. As someone who's a
Impeccable
CPA,
timing.
I need a calculator to do sums like that. Yes. So my son was 6 months old. I actually,
Wow.
and I don't know if this story is similar, in the States and other developed countries, but here in Australia, the rate of people getting made redundant while on maternity leave or pregnant is still 1 in 4. It's 25%.
Wow.
And I was one of those statistics. I was working, in middle management, found out I was pregnant, and they're like, sorry, there's a restructure. You don't have a job anymore.
Wow. Oh, I just got
And
chills.
the other pregnant person in my team, who was also my peer, was also made redundant at exactly the same time. So her and I have been biz besties over the years. We have been on this journey, had our children at the same time, been entrepreneurs both for 8.5 years. But that's just a reality. And, to be honest, in hindsight, my manager, my old manager and I are really good friends. And he always says to me, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I said, it's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah, what a gift.
I am so grateful to have been an entrepreneur as a mum, and I got to build my business. I don't know business any other way. People always ask me, what's it like when you have kids? And I'm like, I don't know, because I always had a baby. Uh, but I do know that I'm very grateful, and the flexibility that it's got. I used to work minimum 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Plus, I would have been dropping my child off at, 7 and picking up at 7. So I feel incredibly, incredibly grateful. And yes, it's hard, but I'm having this conversation also kind of to
I
you
was,
at the moment.
well, it was, I appreciate it, but I'm also like, you are having this conversation at 5 o'clock in the morning, your time.
Yeah, this is true. Um, but yeah, I think it's yeah, we're very, very blessed to be able to run online businesses in today's day
Yeah.
and age. And yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. All right. So let's talk about, if you're open to it,
Yeah.
you had a pretty traumatic accident. And this accident led you down a road of recovery, physical
Yeah.
and mental. And I'm so
Yeah.
curious if you'd talk a little bit about just what that path looked like. Because I've watched some of your content, and I watched a reel that you had put up of the journey through healing. And there are just so many parallels to that healing journey and business or life. And we can kind of like correlate so many things. And you can tell so much of your character by that one particular story, because you didn't fold. You didn't roll over and say, I'm a victim. This is what happened. I'm just going to let everything fall to shit. You picked yourself up by your bootstraps and you said, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to make it work, and I'm going to do the work that's necessary, which isn't easy. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So 2 years ago, I was driving down a freeway at 110 kilometers an hour. Maybe you can convert that for me, Jess.
Oh, like
Maybe
what's the
like, is it
conversion? 60?
70 miles?
60? Yeah.
Yeah, quite fast. On a very, on a freeway. And all of a sudden, I felt this surge forward from behind, and I was hit by a semi-trailer truck, which is a huge truck. Pulled the car over, and suddenly I realized, oh my goodness, I've just been hit by a truck. I mean, the fact that I survived it, obviously the police came, and the policeman was like, I cannot believe you were alive, let alone I got out of the car.
Wow.
And then later that afternoon, or within hours, my neck started freezing up and my back started freezing up. And I realized, oh, this isn't just a walk away from accident thing. And what ensued over the coming weeks and months, basically with a severe whiplash injury. They told me that mine is as severe as you can have without a spinal cord injury.
Wow.
You start to lose a whole bunch of function, and your neck actually, firstly, you use your neck for absolutely everything. You sit, you're using your neck. You talk, you're using your neck. Anything that I was doing was causing pain. If you've got a knee injury or something, you can elevate it and hopefully not be in round the clock pain. Whereas with this neck, it was just constant. Sleeping was hard. And then, yeah, I started to lose function. I couldn't lift my arms. So I started to lose function in my arms. My husband had to blow dry my hair for me. I couldn't do washing. I couldn't wipe down the table. If I literally wiped down our table, I'd be sobbing in the couch on pain. And this
Mm.
is when I'm on narcotic pain relief as well. So I couldn't make my kids sandwiches because I couldn't hold a knife because I was dropping it,
We
and I
need
couldn't cut.
Vegemite. We need the Vegemite.
We need Vegemite. Um, but throughout this whole time, I think that, and again, I guess this is a lot of this mindset work. I just had this deep sense of you're alive. And, yeah, you can't quite do things the way you used to, but I could be a quadriplegic in a wheelchair right now. And I just have to live in the gratitude of that. And also, I lived in a space of, this is not my path. So basically, I got to the 3-month mark. And I was going, this is ridiculous. Come on, guys, I need to get through this. And I went and saw a pain specialist, and he said, look, generally what we see are whiplash as severe as yours. Where you are now is where you're going to stay for the rest of your life. So you're going to have to you have to get off the pain meds, and you're just going to have to deal with it. And at that stage, I had zero movement. I couldn't drive a car. I couldn't lift. I couldn't help with basic household chores. And I remember I left and I just sobbed and grieved it all. And then I'm like, nah, I'm going to show him. And so I was, again, in a very, very blessed and privileged position that I've been able to get support that I know that a lot of people in that position wouldn't be able to. I had physiotherapy. Did a lot of psychotherapy work, which is basically identifying the parts in your brain where trauma is stored and
Mhm.
clearing those parts. And yeah, I was driving a car again within 4 or 5 months, and and bit by bit, I now can, and it's just been such. I know this sounds cliche, but like when you go through something really hard, really crappy, at the time it feels so big, but then when you come through it, I have such an innate sense of I can do anything, and a gratitude around it. I know I hang washing out now, and I'll be, hanging out washing, and then I go, I couldn't do this.
Yeah.
I'm lifting a washing basket. Anytime that I kind of hit a new milestone, weights, I had to go right back to 1 kilo weights.
Yeah.
And now I'll be lifting my weights, and I'm like, look at how strong you are. And I'm still not
It's
lifting as much as I
perspective.
used to, but
Yeah.
it's really, honestly, I can say I feel grateful that I went through it.
Yeah. It's perspective. I say it all the time. It's like when we get a common cold and your nose is stuffy and you're internally thinking like how unfair it is because no one else in the room has a stuffy nose. And you're like, I promise, whatever, universe, God, spirit, Buddha, Allah, I promise when I feel better, I'll be grateful. And it's like, and then 2 days later you're breathing fine and you lose the gratitude pretty quickly. So it's incredible what you've gone through, but I know so much of it is the work though that you were just saying, the psychotherapy, the trauma work, and that's one of my favorite things, the approach that you take to money. So I want to talk about this because we've heard people talk about money stories, right? We've got money stories and generational things that get passed down, and money doesn't grow on trees, and money's the root of all evil, and we hear it like stories. We also, over on the other side, have trauma, and we've heard people talk about big T and little t. So we've got the big trauma, little trauma. But I honestly think you're the first person that I've ever heard talk about money trauma. So can you tell us what money trauma is?
Yeah. So again, in this space, we've got big T, which means like a big trauma. And that's the sort of thing like a car accident or some other, really major event. And then there's little t. And little t is traumas that I'm sure, have you ever had an experience where someone comes up and says, this thing and you're like, oh, I didn't even remember that. It's no big deal to me. And you're like, it was a big deal to me.
Mhm.
And that's kind of what happens in the space of money. So a big T money trauma to me is something like, you went bankrupt, or your parents, you were living in a car, something really, really major in the space of money happened. And then there's also a ton of little micro things that happen in the space of money. So when I think about some of my smaller money traumas, at school, I was the kid that didn't have the Nike shoes. My parents couldn't afford Nikes. So we had this brand, which is called Dunlop Volleys, and they were like $10. And those were the shoes that I wore. Again, very much a first world problem.
Sure.
But those little traumas that do unfold essentially are what shape our beliefs around money. We have something that can happen to us, can change our perception in an instant. And that's what happens in the space of money. We have an experience, and they can be positive experience as well. I still, to this day, remember the first time that someone actually paid me for my coaching, because I was doing
Yeah.
a bit of free coaching at the start. And the first time she paid me $1,000, I get teary now thinking about that feeling of, wow,
Yeah.
I just earned my own money. And we have all of these little micro moments and also major moments that happen through our life that shape how we feel about money. And what happens with our beliefs, as we know, is that we then something happens and we then form a belief around it. And once we've got this belief, it then changes how we show up, how we do things. So if you've had an example like I did, where you know I went through a really 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 tough money time, and then what happens is you're then scared to take big chances again,
Sure.
because you're like, oh my gosh, I did this thing, it didn't work out. I'm never going to go and lean into something to that level, because look what happened. It was disastrous, and I could end up there again. It could be even worse, and I could end up on the streets. And our brain's creating all of these little sub stories off that belief system. And so this is why understanding those money traumas, processing them, clearing them is essential if we want to show up differently, because otherwise it will affect, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Hmm.
I'm scared to show up in my business because something might go wrong. So I'm not going to show up. And then guess what happens when you're not showing up? You're not getting the result.
Sure.
So it kind of becomes this self fulfilling prophecy. And something that I've learned over the years is that most people never take time to go, what's my relationship like with money? What are the things that happen to me? Why do I feel such a sense of lack and scarcity and fear
Yeah.
around money? And diving deep into those stories that led them there.
Is that where it starts? Are those like good prompts for us to start to uncover what trauma we might have or what stories we might believe?
Yeah, I think a really great place to start is what is everything I remember about money? And I mean, this is going to be a big journaling session if
Yeah,
you've
like
never done
that's a
this
long
before.
that's a long one.
But think right back, like start at your childhood and like, what's the
Yeah.
first thing I remember about money? I remember that my parents, there was four of us kids at the time, and we were in two bunk beds in one room. That's my first memory, that four children in one room in bunk beds. Then you start to go, I remember that we did this. I remember that we didn't do this. Okay, into your teen years, into, if you had experiences, positive experiences with money, what did that look like?
Sure.
And then when you see it all written out, you're like, oh, that's why I'm scared to take a chance. Or that's why I hang on to my money so tightly. Or that's why I love to splurge my money and throw it around. And I say
Yeah.
there's three kind of blocks, if it's okay to segue there a bit.
Yeah,
Um,
please.
but the first one is like a block in holding. So we're kind of scared to actually save money. And I know that this was my experience when I first started earning money, because I'd always had none. But whenever it came in, I'm like, quick, we've got to spend it, because what if it all disappears? Kind of a bit counterintuitive,
Yeah,
but
that's so
that's what was
interesting.
going on for
Sure.
me. Um, the next one is a block in spending or a block in investing. And some people are actually terrified. I work with clients sometimes and they're like, oh, I don't think I can hire an assistant yet. I look at their bank balance. I'm like, whoa, I would have hired an assistant years ago. Some people are terrified to lean in and invest in their business, invest in their growth, hiring the team. And then the last ones have got holding, spending, and the last one is a block in receiving,
Mm.
which is, and again, this is where people again feel really uncomfortable actually accepting money. This might show up for you if someone says, hey, how much is it to do this? And you say, oh, that's fine, I'll do it for free. Or someone's like, how much is it to that? And you're like, that's fine, I'll just throw it in, no problems at all. You're scared to
Yeah.
put your prices up. And sometimes you feel uncomfortable even sharing your price or what your
Yeah.
packages look like.
I feel like that is the majority of our beginner level clients that we work with. And I don't know what their specific block is, but I feel like such a common theme for online or for new business owners, new entrepreneurs, coaches is that sort of fear of number one, selling, because there are often stories of like selling is sleazy or selling is bad, or I should be doing it for free. Or if I really wanted to help people, I wouldn't be charging them. Right. And then the other part of it is the opposite end of the spectrum where there's the fear of then rejection. Like, what if I actually do offer and ask for this money and then they reject or they say no or they think it's too priced too high? And then what does that mean about me? So I love this. We have a fear or, excuse me, a block around holding. We have a block around receiving, and we have a block around what was the third one?
Investing.
Investing, right? Or spending,
Yeah.
which is interesting too, because that's like the hoarder where there's almost a
Yes.
fear of like, if I let it go, I won't be able to get it back again. And
Yeah.
it's so wild to think about because I've always been a very good saver and I don't have a problem. There's no block. I don't have a fear in investing. I invest in myself all the time, but I don't spend. And I see spending and investing as two different things. So I don't spend frivolously. I will invest more easily, but the spending on like the silly things or the things that I don't really need or the things that don't really give me the ROI or the value, I don't see the perceived value. I've always been a saver. And I'm so curious. Like I know my dad very much is a saver, and I learned that from him, but there definitely is a fine line between like you're saving and you're hoarding, you're saving and you're not like letting go and using. So with these different blocks, we're starting to uncover, we started at a young age. These are the stories. This is what I think about money. We start to see the blocks. Now, how do we heal them? How do we rewrite them? Are you doing meditations? Is it journaling? Is it, dancing to 150 BPMs for 13.6 seconds? Like, what's the magic thing to heal it?
Well, I guess that's the deep question, isn't it? Look, for me, I use a different bunch of modalities, and it changes over time as well. So I've gone through phases where I religiously journaled every day rather, and then I go through other stages where I'm doing different modalities. At the moment, I'm actually working with my same therapist, my psychotherapist, on clearing some of those money traumas and uncovering, you know all those moments that happened that create these big fears and lack and even jealousy
Mhm.
inside. And that's one of the things that I'm working on at the moment. I really love the process of psychotherapy. I'm really, really glad that, again, a blessing off the back of my accident. Really, you actually store, like, there's one of the things, activities that we did is you move your eyes across and your eyes will jump in the place where the trauma is stored inside your brain, in your physical body. And this is why trauma, and in the space of money as well, it's not just, oh yeah, think about it this way. It's literally imprinted in your body, in your
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah.
And so this is why, people go, okay, how do I shift it? A lot of times, to be honest, it's not just a journal it out or
Yeah.
do the affirmation. It's a whole combination of different things. And yeah, I'd be curious to hear if you've got anything more to add to that. But my experience has been it's a multi-layered process.
Yeah, I believe it's multi-layered as well, and I think there's repetition because if you think about it, there's years, decades for many of us of patterning and beliefs that we've lived into. So you can't just I don't think you can just undo it in one journal session, one meditation. It's like it takes a while to undo it. So there's repetition. And we always say at DBE, we talk about the 3 A's, which in anything in your life, it's awareness, acceptance, and action. So the first part of it is like, how can you become more aware when you're slipping back into the old belief or the old pattern? And then, how can we accept it without judgment? This is where we're at. It's okay. And then move on from it and take action. So, yeah, I definitely think I also have a lot of modalities and I've done a lot of money work through meditations and journaling and EFT tapping and different therapies as well, because so much of it is subconscious.
Yeah. Yeah,
You're not even aware of
absolutely.
it. It's just lingering back there. And the subconscious mind is kind of like a pilot. It's like it's driving the plane. You don't even realize that it's driving the plane. So I think there's an element of sort of waking up that has to happen. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the work, to your point, it's really easy to have then, again, maybe a micro trauma that happens that then slips you back.
Yes.
And you'll start to notice, I've noticed that, when I've been doing the work and doing a lot of healing, that I'll hear people say something negative and I'm like, no, that's not what's going on. Like, my default way of thinking is the positive and seeing the high. And then other times it's really easy to say, yeah, this is really And I'm like, whoa, okay, we've got some more work to do there because my autopilot, my default way of thinking seems to be a negative. Like I'm looking for the bad and not looking for
Mhm.
the good. And that's the thing, there's no destination with this work. It's ongoing and never ending, unfortunately. And there's a saying, new level, new devil.
Sure.
And you sort of think, once I hit the six-figure mark, I'll never feel scared. Once I hit the multi-six figure, whatever it might be. And the reality is the fears, it doesn't go away. It just changes. And
Mhm.
I do agree that it's slightly different when I don't know if I can afford to eat this week as
Sure.
compared to we really want to go on that holiday. Now we can't afford it. However, it's the same fundamental fears that are playing in. What if I'm not good enough? What if this doesn't work out? And in many respects, I find that as our businesses grow, it actually almost gets amplified because
Yeah.
it's not just, I'll shut down the business. It's like, I know shutting down the business is there's a whole bunch of people who are dependent on me
Yep.
and I can't just shut these things down. It just doesn't work like that when you've got a
Mhm.
bigger business. So
Yeah.
in many ways it actually gets amplified, I find, and means that there's got to be more work that gets done as our businesses are growing.
I couldn't agree more. Like retweet, rewind, say it again. That's a soundbite. And I tell my clients that all the time. Especially again, we work with a lot of beginners in our signature program. And I understand, I can empathize with the fear and the uncertainty and the I'm scared to sell and I'm scared to show up on social media. And it's so interesting though. A lot of the fear is like, what are people going to say? And in the same breath, it's like, I don't have any followers. And I'm like, okay, so no one's watching you. This is the perfect time to take action and just do it and start getting better at it. But what's the phrase? I can't think of it. It's kind of like I can't think of it right now, but when you are further along, I feel the same way. I'm like, I pay salaries. Like I pay people salaries. The pressure, I don't want to use the word pressure, but like the reality of it is a little bit scarier for me now than it was back when it was just me. And to your point, and my husband works in the business too. So this is it. Like this is our livelihood and you kind of have to make it work. It's like you're all in at this point. So I always think when I'm out of it, I can say this easily. When something comes up and it's a mirror for me and it's an opportunity to say, "Oh, you actually haven't worked through that story. There still is a trauma there. There still is something that you can heal there even though you thought you worked through it." Now, in the moment, I don't always see it as a gift, but I really do. I can see it as a gift because I realize I cannot get to the next level if I don't clear that path. And the stuff does come up and I find I don't know if you've experienced this, myself, my peers, my mentors, and my clients, it's generally when it comes to money, it's like it's around launching. You think you're good, everything's working, and then all of a sudden something happens. The numbers aren't where they are, where you wanted them. The expectations aren't there. You're getting default payments from clients. Someone cancels, and it like so quickly just snaps you right back into all of a sudden uncertainty and fear and shame and all these things. And it's like that comeback rate of how quick can you get back on the path to healing and how quick can you get back onto the path of sort of the positive way of thinking about it, which I don't know if you have any pointers or tips on how you do that, but I know that takes people out.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I think that it's like a muscle. I think the more that you are using it, like think about the first time. If you haven't been to the gym in 3 years and you went to the gym, you would be limping around in pain. But the more that you are going to the gym, sometimes I forget to stretch afterwards and I'm like, oh, I'm actually not even that sore because I'm going so regularly. And again, a blessing of my injury. I have to go regularly now. Uh, but it's the same with the more that you show up, the more that you fail, you kind of get a bit used to it. And it doesn't mean that it's not hard. It doesn't
Mm,
mean that it's not scary. But, I remember my first launch that didn't go to plan. I sobbed on my couch like a little baby. You would have thought that someone had died the way that I carried on. I was like, I'm so over this. Everything I've given to my audience. I was angry. I was
yeah.
devastated. And now if a launch doesn't go to plan, I'm like, yeah, that sucks. Okay, let's have a look at what's happened. Obviously it still hurts, but I'm not in this downward spiral of self-loathing and my
Hmm.
world is over. I am just able to say, okay, right, what have we learned? What's the lesson off the back of that? We always do a launch debrief, which again, I think is really
Yeah.
helpful because a lot of times, if you separate the emotion from what's going on, There's a lot of times, I know one of the things that James Wedmore, our common connection, says in common, he's like, success leaves clues.
Mhm.
And quite frankly, so does failure. You know, you
Yeah.
you go and have a look at your numbers afterwards. And I've done this with clients of mine, and they're like, it was an absolute freaking disaster. And I'm like, well, actually, where this many people came in, this many people showed up live, this many people converted, you actually outperformed, the average conversion rate from
Yep.
people in launches. So you actually did beat most people. You just didn't have enough people in there. And
So
when we
true.
can start to reframe those perspectives in hindsight, and again, the advice that I'd say to people in the early stages, it does get easier. And the more and more that you do it, you will get a lot more used to it. And yeah, and you'll be able to navigate through it a lot more easy. Well,
Yeah.
I've been able to. And again, this all comes down to this money work.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears to a little bit more of like the black and white accountant, logical, tactical finance stuff. But I also just want to make sure we bridge the gap as we move into like checking the health of your financial business, right? Like checking the health of the finances in your business and talking about maybe profits and loss and revenue and all these types of things. How important do you think it is to first work through the money traumas and the stories before you even start taking a look at that stuff? Or do you think it can happen at the same time or
This is why I so many times I've thought, how can I need to niche, we say niche in Australia, but niche. I need to niche. I need to like get like, which is my thing. And I'm like, I don't think that you can look at your finances without having done this work.
yeah.
Because what will happen is you will see a number and you will spiral, and it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is why I feel like I have to teach both of those things in parallel,
Yeah.
is because this work, to your point, it's so essential, because again, otherwise the same things just play out. We
Mhm.
have a look, we create a story, it becomes a belief, it affects our actions, and again, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
So
Or we don't even look at
they have to
all.
work in parallel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. We just completely avoid. I can't deal with it. I'm not going
Yeah.
to look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to know. And then that's when you end up really, really in a position where it could be detrimental to your business. So, or your personal life if you're not a business owner. I mean, majority of our clientele that listen to this, our audience and community are definitely all entrepreneurs. But if you were to kind of walk somebody through the process of checking on their business finances or their financial health of their business, like what are we looking at? What are the numbers we're looking at? How often do we have to look at them? Is this like a weekly meeting with yourself? Is it a monthly date? Is it quarterly? Kind of give us a little framework there.
Yeah, for sure. So I've got a process that I call money meetings. And my money meetings are dedicated time to say to money, hey, you're important to me. I love you. And we're going to have this time to really focus on you. It's like if you're going through marriage troubles, you don't go, oh my gosh, I can't deal with you right now. I'm just going to go away for 6 months and hope that it gets better. We kind of need to dive in, and
Yeah.
that's what I believe about money. And it's even better if we can be proactive in that relationship before we wait till it's a disaster. We're on top of it in the front foot. So here's my cycle that I recommend. Every Monday morning I do a 15-minute cash flow meeting. So that is having a look at the next 8 weeks, usually in my kind of business. It can be a bit longer depending on the type of industry that you're in, but I think that 8 weeks for an online business is a good look. You're having a look at what's coming in, what's going out, and when. And your cash flow forecast or your cash flow meeting is just your way of saying, oh my goodness, we're going to run out of cash if we don't do something a bit differently. Or, oh, I've got that tax bill coming up on that date. Okay, I need to plan for that. And the purpose of doing this, and this is how we weave our money mindset into it. If we don't like what the numbers are telling us, we're, oh, it's all a disaster. I hate looking at my numbers. We say, right, what am I going to do about this? And the way that I manipulate my 8 week plan through my cash flow forecast is I say, okay, if I am not hitting the goals that I want to hear, what can I do? And I might say, I'm going to launch a pop up offer. And this is what it's going to look like. And that will deliver that much cash there. Or on the flip side, on my outflows, I might say, okay, what can we do to change things up here? I don't know if this is an option in the States, but here what we can do is contact the tax office and say, hey, can I get a payment plan to pay off my tax over a bit of a longer period of time?
Sure.
We could we could cut back some of our team's hours if that's an option, if they're casuals or contractors. And like for me, I had a big photo shoot planned, and I don't do photo shoots small. I've got assistants. I'm hiring a house, style. It's all happening. And I looked at my cash flow forecast when that was in. I said, do I really need to be doing that right now? And I said, I'm just going to push that back. So that's examples of how we use our mindset
Mhm.
and the numbers to change things up.
I love that. Can you give
So
us
that's,
one or two other examples of, let's say we're looking at our numbers and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to run out of money in the next 8 weeks. So here's the cool thing. We create money out of thin air, right? That's what we're doing. We're like literally just selling wisdom. So we create money out of thin air. What are one or two examples of ways that maybe we can bring in more money without having to launch something new or launch something old?
Yeah. So again, you could have upsells to your existing clients.
Cool.
So you could say, hey, I'm going to be in wherever. And I was thinking we could do this session. This is what this would look like without having to do a big public launch. A thing that I like to do is what I call like a secret launch. I contact people and I say, hey, I'm doing this thing at the moment. It might be like a Voxer only support. Particularly, I find people that have either been leading in or, done a discovery call, not quite booked with you yet,
Mhm.
or previous clients, I find if someone's got that know, like, and trust with you, if you reach out to them and say, hey, I've got this thing, this is what it looks like. A lot of the times, if people trust you, they will say, amazing, sounds good, sign me up.
Yeah.
And so there's ways that without creating this entire launch, one of the things that I do as like at the moment, I'm pre-selling a retreat for November.
Ooh, where
And
is
I'm
it?
just like, it's in Australia at the Gold Coast.
Amazing.
And I'm having a prepayment plan. And for me, this is a great little win-win. People can start paying it off early so they don't just get hit with a big sum at the time. And also it's a cash flow, that kind of just an extra little bit of cash to come in each month. So yeah, there's definitely lots of levers that we can pull. If you do have a funnel, again, you can look at what are some extra things that I can do to drive traffic to it. Again, without necessarily having to invest, you could do an affiliate opportunity. You could again go, yeah, I love a private launch. I think that's like a little, hey, here's the thing that I've got. Does this
Yeah.
feel aligned for you? And I bet that there are people in your world that if you created something that's, you know what people love to have from you. If you could go and privately offer it to them, they might jump on it.
Yeah, I love it. I think thinking outside the box is really important when it comes to creating money, right? Because we get so like blinded, we have our blinders on and we're like, we have to launch and it's high ticket or low ticket, or it's like a big live launch or a webinar and you have to have a membership or a high ticket course. And it's kind of like, this is where we live. We actually, this past week, we're hosting our elite mastermind retreat for our mastermind clients. And we had a gal come in who was a speaker. She's a incredible speaker and she was a PR expert, public relations. And she just blew everybody's mind in the first 5 seconds because she was talking about how she will go on vacation with her husband. They'll go on a holiday and she'll reach out to brands and she'll have brands sponsor her vacation. So not just like send me a cute pair of leggings and I'll take a picture in them, but she's actually pitching them 5K, 10K, 20K packages where then on vacation, she'll create like a storyboard and put up a couple posts about said product or said, company. And she's getting vacations paid for and making money on top of it. So I think there's so many ways. And I love that you brought up like affiliates and sort of a secret little thing and bumps and add-ons and upsells. Like there are just so many different ways that we can create cash. We really can. So I would empower anyone listening when you look at your numbers, when you have your money date, even if it's not every Monday, if you're not loving how they're looking, go back to the mindset work and say, I can be in control of this. Like I can choose which direction this is going to go in and then get really curious as to what can we create? How do we make this fun? Where can we tighten the belt? I love that. I love it so much.
Yeah. Oh, I've just thought of a few more actually while you were.
Give it to us. Yeah.
Another thing that I'm doing at the moment that I'm just loving is I'm getting paid to speak to people's communities. So
Amazing.
I literally sit here in my Ugg boots at home, jump on Zoom, and I get paid to go spend an hour chatting to other people's communities. And yeah, again, something years ago, I would have thought, who's going to pay me? Like, I get getting paid to go and speak at an event, but getting paid to speak to people's communities for me is just such an easy, effortless, fun way to make money. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
And you're
lots of
also
different.
getting exposure and visibility, which turns into sales in the future. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
huge. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Win-win.
Yeah. So a couple years ago, I want to say 2 years ago, you wrote a book. Was that two
I
years
did.
ago?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about
Oh, so
intentional profit
was
and
it
who
that
it's
was
for.
last year?
Was it
Maybe that
last
was
year?
last year. I wrote it 2 years ago, but it got
Okay.
launched last year.
Amazing.
My book's called Intentional Profit, and it's a lot about the concepts that we've been speaking about today. It's a really when I first got the book, it felt like I'd poured my blood, sweat, and tears into it. And it's actually quite a small book. But the feedback I've got from everyone is people say, because there's another well known profit book and it's huge. And I'm a qualified accountant. And I'm going to be honest, I found it really dry. I couldn't even get through it. And for me, I didn't want my book to be a textbook about
Mhm.
accounting. I wanted it to be a fun, playful, easy to use tool that actually has practical steps in it that says, okay, set up your money meetings. We talk about the other kind of money meeting, which is at the end of every month, how you actually look back on your profit and loss as well. Um, a high level view on how to actually go and create a budget in your business. And it's all interwoven with these concepts of, yeah, I guess creation and expansion. And, how I start the book by sharing about how oh gosh, 4 or 5 years ago, I had this crazy dream that I wanted to live by the beach, and I now have an 18-meter beach at the back of my house. I
Wow.
literally live in a waterfront home, and it all started from this crazy idea, and then putting momentum, action, energy into creation, and sharing that anything is possible when you open yourself up. And then that point that you mentioned earlier, the 3 A's: action. Like you
Yeah.
can't just sit around and manifest. You actually do have to do the things to take the action as well.
Louder for the people in the back.
Exactly.
I love it. I think sometimes the pendulum just swings too far. And so it went from like hustle and grind and work to now we're like anti-hustle. And I'm like, no, no, we're in the middle. It's got to be in the middle always,
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Amazing. And you have your own podcast. You've been doing that for
Yeah.
5 years?
5 years, yeah.
Amazing.
Very
Congrats.
creatively called the Clare Wood podcast. I'm not the most not the
Uh,
most creative person, but yeah, my podcast again and again to the listeners, if there's something that you're scared to do, I was terrified. I used to hate speaking. My first podcast I went on to, I had a panic attack. I had to
wow.
stop the recording.
Wow.
I said, I can't do this. I can't do this. I was so nervous, so anxious. I couldn't do Instagram lives. I couldn't even post photos of myself on my feed. And I just kept doing it and showing up and hating it at the start. And now, I mean, I love speaking. I'm such a confident speaker. I really enjoy being able to do this work. And I'd say that there's a lot about that discomfort. Growth comes through discomfort. So, yeah, the fact that I'm now 260 episodes in, 5 years in, I've interviewed some of the most incredible guests from around the world.
Wow.
Actually, I'll have to have you on my podcast at some
I would
stage.
love to. Yes.
And yeah, it's basically just been a process of getting uncomfortable and growing through it.
Incredible. Just amazing. I would never have guessed speaking with you today that you once had nerves about speaking, right? Or you go to your Instagram page and you have tons of talking head videos, different reels that you've put up. I mean, I never would have thought that. So I want to publicly edify you and just say how amazing it is because it's also evidence for someone who's listening right now, right? When we don't have the evidence in our own lives, we get to borrow it from other people. And so for the person who's listening who is scared to show up or uncomfortable or get sweaty armpits or whatever it might be, it's like it's okay. And what it could turn into when you keep going is just incredible. So congrats to you on 5 years of podcasting. That is quite the journey.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
yeah. Before we get into just a couple rapid fire questions, pimp yourself out. So, where can people find you on social media? How can they work with you? What do you have going on right now? What are you most excited about? Tell us everything.
I'm most excited at the moment, ironically, about speaking. It's that I'm doing a lot of at the moment. I am really, really just enjoying getting out and talking about money with different audiences. I also have all of the usual things going on behind the scenes, my courses. I'm launching my mindset course again soon. I've got a retreat going on at the moment or later in the year, which I'm really excited about. And yeah, there's lots of really positive fun things coming up. Oh, the other thing, I'm launching well, I've been on YouTube. I've been sharing my podcast and doing a few videos, but I'm actually going to be doing a whole new angle on my podcast soon, which I'm really excited about, getting into more vlogging style as well. So
Very cool.
lots of fun stuff. The best place to get in touch is probably through my website, which is Clare Wood, CLARE, no I, clarewood.com. And I've got
Awesome.
links to my socials and things on there.
Love it. We'll make sure to link that in the show notes for you. You down for some rapid fire questions?
I'm a bit nervous, but I'll give it a
No.
shot. I always say yes.
So you meditate. That's part of your daily
Yeah.
practice or weekly or whatever. Are you doing guided meditations or you're just doing them by yourself?
Well, I've recently been challenged to go into silent meditations, and it's
Okay.
freaking killing me, a mind like mine, but I'm doing it.
Good. When you were doing guided, what were some of your favorite guided meditations?
I love Insight Timer. That's my
Oh,
favorite tool that I use. There's heaps of free meditations on there. And I like my go-to, I'm a money gal, so it's usually around manifestation. I'm gonna be
cool.
honest.
I totally forgot about Insight Timer. I haven't even thought of that or heard that in years. I'll have to pull that back up. I totally forgot about that one. Love it. You mentioned earlier new levels, new devils. I'm curious what one of your new devils is.
Ooh, let me think. I think it's this growth's edge of discomfort. I'm asking for a lot of things at the moment. And it's one of the things that I say to my clients all the time. I'm like, ask questions that you think the answer will be no to. I asked you if I could reschedule today's podcast, which is something I would never normally do. I was going to just get up at 4 a.m. and do it.
Insane.
But I'm asking questions, and I did this post saying, hey, I'm looking to be on 100 podcasts by the end of the year. The influx of requests that are coming through is just mind blowing. And so I'm asking a lot of questions, a lot of uncomfortable questions. I'm asking friends to connect me with people. I'm saying, hey,
Yeah.
can you put me in touch with this person? Hey, would you do this thing? And people are saying no. And I'm getting okay with getting no's. So that's kind of my growth edge at the moment. I'm going to be honest, I still get butterflies. I still get nervous when I'm asking for something scary. But the more, again, that you do it, you go, oh, well, I got to know. At least
Yeah.
I asked.
Yeah. Well, and that's how we ended up here today. You posted that. Lauren from my
Awesome.
team saw that because she follows you. And she was like, oh, we have a podcast. We can help out with the 100. Like, we'd love to have you on. You have a brilliant business. You're a brilliant woman. You're well spoken. Like, come on, you can give value to our audience and check it off. So you only need 99 now.
Yeah, well, I've already got way more booked in than I had
Amazing.
anticipated. So I'm well above my run rate to hit my goal, which is
That's
exciting.
amazing. That's awesome. Congrats. If
Thank
you
you.
were to give a TED talk, do you have TED in Australia? That's such a dumb
We do.
question.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, I feel horrible that I didn't even know that. I just wasn't sure. If you were to give a TED talk on nothing you're known for, so no money, no accounting, no finances, no mindset, nothing, what would you give it on?
This is really left field, but dating. I
Ooh.
was I was single for like 8 years, and I am my friends always call me a part-time free dating coach. It's something that I just love giving advice around, and yeah, it's something that it always interests me. I found the love of my life, and I want other people
Yeah.
to find theirs as well. So yeah, that's
Where'd
something
you
that's my
where'd you meet
little.
him?
I met him at a wedding,
Okay.
and again, this is going back to the advice that I give people. I approached him. I went up to him and just said, "Are you going to buy me a drink?" And he said no. And then, the rest is history. We've been married for 10 years, 2 kids later.
Amazing.
But I think that, again, a lot of people don't ever, particularly in the dating world, they don't put themselves out there. They don't approach people. They won't flirt with people. And that would be what my talk would be all about.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so we call this the $50,000 question. I don't know the current exchange rate. I don't think it's great on your end. So we can just use
Terrible.
US dollars for right now. If
Yeah.
we were to cut you a check for $50,000, you can split it up or use it in one lump sum, but you have to use it in or on your business. How would you use it?
Oh, great question. I would straight away be investing more into the space of paid advertising.
Cool.
And I would do a lot of things that appear to not have a direct ROI. So I would love to create like a production style TV show. There's a magazine that I'm going to try and do anyway, but trying to create things that are just about giving value that a lot of times in our business we can't justify with an ROI. Like my book was an example. My book probably is just about breaking even now, but truthfully, it lost me money for a long period of time. And I love, love, love being able to say, hey, this is something to give back. And then I find that the abundance eventually does come back off the back of it. So
Yeah. I
that's the
love that.
stuff that I'd be doing. I'd be doing the fun stuff that my accounting brain sort of struggles to wrap its head around day to day, but I'd love to do some things like that.
Yeah, I love that the fun stuff now is the stuff that you were once scared of. You're like, "I'd hire a production team for." I'm like, "Oh, really?" That's
Yes.
so cool, though. I love it. Okay, last and final question that we ask everybody. We name the company Digital Business Evolution because we believe we're always evolving and growing. And as we evolve, so does our business. What is your next personal or business evolution?
Ooh. I think for me, it's really about money, the next level of income growth for me. And I know that that sounds a little bit shallow, but that's literally what the next level looks like. It looks like stepping into more income, more impact, and stepping into just more like global work as well, which is what I'm really excited about.
I love it. Well, make sure you are following along on Instagram so you can see the journey. I know you have two pages, but Claire_Wood_coach is one of them. Is that the one where we would send people?
That's the only one I've got.
Oh,
I do have a lot of people, a lot of fake accounts. I think because I work in the space of money, a lot of people keep
yeah.
copying, and unfortunately, but there's only one. It's the verified
Okay.
tick one, Claire_Wood_coach.
Perfect. And there's no I in Claire for us in the States. Most people oftentimes spell it with an I. So make sure you get that
Same
right.
here. I don't know what my mum was thinking.
You're different. You're the 1%. You got to stand out.
Well,
You gotta
that's
stand
it.
out. She knew. She knew. I love it. Claire, thank you so much for being here today. Friends, if you love this episode and you got value out of it, if you're intrigued, if you're excited to do some of the money trauma work and clean up some of the stories that you have, or if you're just planning on having a little date with yourself and your money, I'd love to know. So take a screenshot, share it out on social, tag Claire at Claire_Wood_coach, tag me at I am Jessica DeRose. Let us know what you're working on so that we can connect with you personally. And as always, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.